Clara loved the quiet mornings at her little cafe. The smell of coffee and baked bread mixing with the soft chatter of regulars, the sunlight slipping through the tall windows painting everything gold. Yet today, there was a strange tension in the air, as if something was about to happen, something she hadn't expected. And when the bell above the door jingled loudly, her heart jumped because standing there was Liam, her high school friend, the boy she had spent countless afternoons laughing with, sharing secrets and sometimes just staring at each other without saying a word. And now he was older, taller, carrying a small worn toolbox in his hand, his eyes scanning the cafe with a mix of curiosity and familiarity that made Clara feel both excited and nervous, memories flooding back in a rush she wasn't ready to handle. The way he had always noticed little details, like the crooked picture frame or the way the sunlight hit the corner table, the way he had cared so effortlessly and deeply, and now seeing him here, she realized how much she had missed, not just his presence, but the way he made everything feel lighter, easier, warmer. And she tried to act casual, brushing her hair from her face and pretending to check an order, but her hands trembled slightly as she poured a cup of coffee, trying to focus on anything other than him. And yet, she couldn't help sneaking glances, noticing how the sunlight caught the golden highlights in his hair, the way his hands were steady as he set down the toolbox, the slight crease of concentration between his brows, the familiar way he shifted his weight when he was thinking, and every little gesture made her chest ache with something she couldn't quite name, a mixture of longing and nostalgia, a quiet hope she had tried to suppress over the years. And then he spoke softly, almost hesitantly. "Clara, do you need a hand with the cafe repairs?" And it was such a simple question, practical even, but the way he said her name with warmth and care sent a jolt through her heart, because it was a reminder of everything they had shared, everything left unsaid, everything that had lingered between them like a shadow of the past. And she wanted to tell him everything, to ask why he had returned, why now, why her heart still remembered him so vividly, but the words stuck, trapped behind a mixture of excitement and fear, so she only nodded, unable to speak, her eyes locking with his in a silent conversation that said more than words ever could. And as Liam bent down to examine a wobbly chair, taking out a wrench from his toolbox, adjusting screws with careful precision, she felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, some things from the past weren't lost forever. Maybe they could be fixed, mended like the furniture he was tending to. And she watched him work, noticing the small details, the way he focused, the way he smiled when something clicked into place, the way he glanced at her every now and then as if checking that she was watching. And in that moment, the cafe felt alive with possibility. Every creak of a chair, every sunlight ray, every faint clink of metal from his tools echoing like a heartbeat in the quiet morning. And she realized she had been waiting for this moment without even knowing it, waiting to see him again, to feel that mix of comfort and excitement that came with being near him. And as the morning stretched on, customers drifting in and out, Clara stayed by the counter, stealing glances, feeling her heart race as Liam moved through the cafe, fixing tables, adjusting chairs, wiping down counters, always careful, always attentive, always somehow reminding her of who they had been and who they might still be. And when he finally looked up and smiled at her, that gentle boyish smile that had once made her laugh until her stomach hurt, she felt a tear threaten to fall, a tear of recognition, of relief, of longing. And she realized that today, with Liam back, with the cafe alive in sunlight and coffee aroma, something was beginning again, something fragile but undeniable, something that might just grow if given the chance. And as he straightened the last chair, wiping his hands on a cloth, he caught her watching him, raised an eyebrow and asked softly, "So how's everything holding up?" And Clara laughed, a little breathless, a little nervous, and said, "Better now that you're here." And that was the first step, the quiet moment where the past and present brushed against each other, delicate and electric, and neither of them could deny the tension, the hope, the possibility. And as the sun climbed higher, spilling light across the room, Clara knew that nothing would ever feel quite the same again, because Liam was back, and he wasn't just fixing tables. He was starting to fix the unspoken spaces in her heart too. Liam moved through the cafe with quiet confidence, his toolbox beside him, adjusting wobbly chairs, fixing squeaky doors, tightening loose screws, and every small motion seemed to carry a rhythm that drew Clara's attention like a magnet. She watched him from behind the counter, fascinated by the way he worked, noticing the care in every movement, the thoughtfulness in how he inspected each problem before acting, the steady precision of his hands. And she felt something stir deep in her chest, a fluttering excitement mixed with a nostalgia she hadn't realized she was still holding on to. Every glance she stole at him brought a rush of memories, of laughter and whispered secrets, of late nights they had spent under the stars talking about dreams too big for their small town. And now, seeing him here, she felt as if the past and present were colliding. The cafe, a small stage where old feelings could quietly resurface without warning, and Liam glanced at her occasionally, offering small smiles that made her stomach twist, a warmth spreading through her like sunlight after rain, subtle reminders that he remembered her, that he noticed her, and every moment made her heart beat faster, a mixture of excitement and fear and something tender she couldn't name. And when he straightened a leaning chair and paused to wipe his hands on a cloth, he looked at her and said, "You've really kept this place alive, Clara. It's not easy running it alone, is it?" And the simplicity of the question struck her more than she expected, because it wasn't just about the cafe, it was about her, about the quiet strength she had carried, the nights she had spent worrying, the moments she had doubted herself, and here he was, noticing, acknowledging, recognizing what she had accomplished, and she felt a lump in her throat, caught between pride and vulnerability, and she said softly, "It's been a lot, but I manage. Always have." And her voice trembled slightly, betraying the calm exterior she tried to maintain, and Liam nodded, understanding more than she had said, as if he could read between the lines, as if he could sense the weight she carried, and she realized that even after all these years, some connections didn't fade, some bonds remained quietly unbroken, waiting for the right moment to be noticed, to be acknowledged. And when he moved to fix the counter where a small crack had formed, she noticed the intensity in his gaze, the way he focused completely on the task, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, and yet there was a gentleness in his touch, a patience that made her wonder if he had always been this way, or if life had made him softer, stronger, more aware of the small things that mattered. And as she observed him, she felt an ache of longing, a quiet yearning for moments she hadn't allowed herself to hope for. And when he straightened up and looked at her again, there was something in his eyes, a softness, a warmth, a recognition of all that had been left unsaid between them, and she felt her pulse quicken, unsure if it was excitement, nervousness, or the familiar stirrings of attraction she had tried to ignore. And he spoke again, casually, but with a gentle sincerity that made her heart skip. "You've done an amazing job keeping this place cozy. I can see why people love coming here. But a little fixing never hurts, right?" And Clara laughed softly, a sound mingling relief and tension, because she knew he was right. The cafe needed care, yes, but so did the spaces in her heart that had remained quiet for years. And watching him work, seeing the way he moved, noticing the way he occasionally brushed his hair from his forehead, or how he paused to consider the next step, or the subtle way he glanced at her as if checking whether she was watching, she realized the cafe was not just being repaired physically. It was being revitalized emotionally, charged with the unspoken possibilities of what could come, and she felt a shiver of anticipation, a mix of hope and fear that made her chest feel tight. And when he knelt to fix a chair leg that had been unstable for years, their knees almost touching briefly, a spark of electricity seemed to pass between them, subtle but undeniable, a reminder that some connections could never be erased, that some feelings lay dormant, waiting for the right touch, the right glance, the right moment to resurface. And she wondered if he felt it too, the quiet tension, the unspoken acknowledgement that perhaps this moment was bigger than a cafe repair. Perhaps it was a chance to reconnect with something precious that had been left behind in youth, left fragile but alive. And as he straightened up again, wiping sweat from his brow, he said with a soft smile, "You know, it's funny. I never thought I'd come back here and find everything still as it was. Yet somehow it feels different with you still here." And her breath caught, because the words were simple but heavy with meaning, layered with memories and emotions that neither of them had voiced, and she wanted to answer, to tell him that she had missed him, that the cafe had never felt truly complete without him, that her heart had quietly carried a space reserved just for moments like this. And yet the words felt too vulnerable, too raw, so she simply smiled, her eyes meeting his, and nodded, and that small gesture, that simple acknowledgement, seemed to bridge years of distance, of uncertainty, of quiet longing, a silent understanding that some bonds didn't require words to be felt. And as the afternoon sunlight shifted through the windows, casting warm beams across the floor, she noticed how the cafe seemed brighter, almost as if his presence illuminated every corner, every table, every chair, every small imperfection. And she realized that the repairs he was making were not just mechanical, They were symbolic, tiny gestures of care that mirrored the care he seemed to offer her, quietly, gently, steadily, and as he moved on to fix a small crack in the counter, she followed his movements with her eyes, heart racing, caught in a mixture of admiration, attraction, and nostalgia, remembering the boy he had been, realizing the man he had become, and wondering if the person she had once been would fit into this new version of him. And he paused mid-task, glancing at her with that familiar, soft smile, and said almost to himself, "Funny how some things feel like they've been waiting for a second chance." And Clara felt a tear threaten to fall, a mixture of relief, hope, and the faint sting of what had been lost and what might still be regained, and she realized in that instant that the cafe had become a stage for more than repairs. It had become a place where emotions long buried could surface gently, softly, without force, without rush, yet with undeniable presence. And when Liam finally set down his tools for a brief moment, leaning against the counter beside her, brushing dust from his hands, their shoulders almost touching, she felt an unspoken connection, a tension that hummed quietly between them, the kind that spoke of shared history, shared emotions, shared potential for something more. And he looked at her, eyes thoughtful, and said, "I guess some things, like old furniture and old feelings, just need a little attention to shine again." And Clara laughed softly, the sound mingling with the soft hum of the cafe, and she realized he was right, that life like the cafe required care, attention, patience, and sometimes the gentle courage to reach out and repair what had been neglected. And as the day moved on, Liam continued his work, each adjustment, each repair, each glance at Clara carrying more weight than the last, weaving an invisible thread between them. And Clara felt herself drawn to him, heart racing, mind swirling, emotions tumbling in a mix of excitement, fear, and longing. And when a customer came in briefly, breaking the quiet tension, she noticed how Liam interacted with them, polite, attentive, warm, charming in a way that reminded her of why she had once adored him. And as he returned to his tasks, she couldn't help but notice how seamlessly he fit into the cafe, into her life, into the spaces she had never realized were waiting for him. And every small movement, every soft smile, every thoughtful action made her heart ache and hope at the same time, a delicate balance of desire and caution. And she understood that this day, this moment, this simple act of repairing a cafe, was the beginning of something more, something fragile and delicate, yet undeniable. And as the sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the floor, Clara watched him finish adjusting the last chair, wiping his hands on a cloth, glancing at her with that gentle, searching look. And she knew that the repairs he was making were more than physical, they were emotional, spiritual, a quiet mending of spaces that had been left lonely for too long. And in that quiet, shared moment, she felt the stirrings of hope, the possibility of love rekindled, the gentle whisper of something real and tender and lasting. And she realized that sometimes, fixing what's broken is not just about tools and screws, it's about attention, care, and the courage to step back into the spaces that matter most. And as Liam finally stood, brushing off his pants and offering her a small, shy smile, she knew that the cafe, her heart, and perhaps their connection, had been changed forever, gently, subtly, but irrevocably, by the return of someone who had always mattered, someone who had always held the quiet power to make her heart skip and the soft promise of a second chance linger in the air. As the afternoon faded into evening, the cafe quieted down, sunlight slipping through the windows in long golden streaks, and Clara found herself standing near the counter, heart pounding, watching Liam move with ease and confidence, adjusting the last few loose fixtures, wiping his hands on a cloth, and every motion seemed deliberate, careful, almost hypnotic, drawing her attention again and again. And she realized she couldn't look away, her thoughts tumbling with memories of the past, the moments they had shared, the laughter, the secret glances, the shy conversations, and the unspoken attraction that had always lingered between them, now resurfacing stronger than she had expected, a pull she hadn't anticipated, a warmth that spread through her chest with each glance he threw her way, subtle but unmistakable. And Liam seemed aware of it too, pausing every so often to meet her eyes, a small gentle smile playing on his lips, that same smile from years ago, but deeper somehow, seasoned by time and experience, and it made her pulse quicken, a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and longing she hadn't felt in years. And as he bent down to fix a chair, their knees almost brushing, a spark of electricity passed silently between them, so brief, so fleeting, yet impossible to ignore. And Clara felt her cheeks warm, heart racing, caught between desire and hesitation, wanting to reach out yet afraid of disrupting the fragile balance of the moment. and she noticed the way he moved, deliberate and thoughtful. His hands skilled and steady, yet tender in a way that reminded her of how deeply he had always cared. The same boy who had once held her hand under the stars, who had listened when no one else would, who had understood her fears and dreams without her having to explain. And she realized that some things never truly faded, that some connections remained quietly alive, waiting for the right moment to be acknowledged. And when Liam finally straightened up, brushing the dust from his sleeves, he caught her watching him and said softly, "Clara, it's amazing to see how you've kept everything together here. But I feel like there's still so much more we could do." And the gentle tone of his voice, the way he said her name, carried weight, a quiet invitation, an acknowledgement of more than just the cafe repairs. And her heart thumped loudly, caught in the tension of wanting to respond, wanting to tell him everything she had buried over the years, the longing, the unspoken feelings, the quiet hope she had held for a second chance. Yet she could only nod, her throat tight, words failing her, and Liam smiled, almost knowingly, moving to inspect a door hinge, the soft creak filling the room, the mundane sounds around them heightened by the intensity of their shared silence. And Clara felt as if time had slowed, the world reduced to golden light, the faint aroma of coffee, the soft hum of the cafe, and the subtle energy between them, a delicate, almost tangible thread weaving their hearts together, bridging years of distance and unspoken emotions. And when he paused to glance at her, eyes soft and searching, she felt a lump in her throat, a mix of desire, nervousness, and a fragile hope that perhaps he felt the same, that the spark she sensed was real, not just a ghost of the past. And as he knelt to fix a small crack in the counter, the proximity made her pulse race, the warmth of his presence overwhelming yet comforting, familiar yet thrilling, and she wondered if he felt the same electric tension, the quiet acknowledgement that something unspoken existed, fragile but undeniable, ready to surface if given the chance. And when Liam straightened, brushing his hands together, he said quietly, "You know, sometimes I think about all the times we never said what we meant, all the chances we missed, and I wonder if we're finally here to make up for that." And the words, simple yet layered, hung in the air, weighty with meaning, touching on memories, regrets, hopes and possibilities. And Clara felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but from relief, hope, and the realization that this moment could be a turning point, a chance to finally confront what had always lingered between them, the connection they had tried to ignore but could never truly forget. And she wanted to reach out, to close the distance, to speak, to confess, but fear held her back, fear of rejection, of misreading the moment, of losing the fragile balance they had found. And yet, the pull was too strong, the tension too real, and she found herself stepping closer, drawn by something intangible, a magnetic force that had survived years of separation, distance and silence. And Liam noticed, his gaze softening, warmth in his eyes, a silent encouragement, a quiet invitation. And when he finally spoke again, voice low, gentle, "Clara, I've missed you." The word struck her like a wave, a mix of relief, longing and anticipation, and she felt her heart swell, tears threatening to fall, because she realized he had carried a similar longing, a shared desire that had been waiting for the right moment to be voiced. And as they stood there, the faint clink of tools, the shifting sunlight, the quiet hum of the cafe framing the scene, she felt a fragile courage rise within her, a willingness to step into the vulnerability of the moment, to let the emotions she had kept hidden surface, to acknowledge that perhaps this reunion was more than coincidence, perhaps it was fate, perhaps it was the universe giving them a second chance. And Liam stepped closer too, their shoulders almost brushing, the subtle warmth sending a shiver through her body, a quiet thrill that made every nerve stand on edge. And she realized that their connection, long dormant, had not only survived but grown stronger, resilient in its silence, patient in its waiting. And when he reached out, hand hovering near hers, she felt a magnetic pull, a longing that demanded response, and she let her fingers brush his, a tentative touch, simple yet profound. And Liam's eyes softened, a smile tugging at his lips, and that small gesture spoke volumes, more than words could convey, an acknowledgement of shared history, shared emotions, shared possibility. And as the evening shadows lengthened, painting the cafe in warm amber light, Clara felt her heart beat faster, a mixture of hope, excitement, nervousness and longing, all mingling into a heady cocktail of emotion that left her breathless and yet exhilarated. And when Liam finally straightened, brushing his hands one last time, he looked at her with a gentle intensity, voice low, almost a whisper, "Clara, maybe some things are worth taking a second look at. And she felt a shiver of anticipation, understanding and longing, because she knew he wasn't just talking about the cafe, he was talking about them. About the spaces between them that had never truly been closed, about the chance to rebuild, to reconnect, to explore the emotions they had left unspoken for years, and she felt her chest tighten with emotion, knowing that this was the moment where the past and present collided. Fragile yet powerful, tender yet urgent, and she wanted to speak, to laugh, to cry, to take his hand fully, to acknowledge everything they had missed and everything they could still have. And Liam, sensing her hesitation, stepped just a little closer, their proximity electric, the warmth of his body, the gentle fragrance of his presence, the quiet intensity of his gaze, all stirring feelings she had tried to bury, feelings that now rose unstoppable, undeniable, and she felt a tear slip down her cheek, quickly brushed away, a mix of relief, hope and longing. And when he reached out to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the touch feather-light, intimate yet respectful, her pulse quickened, and she realized that in that small, quiet gesture, he was speaking volumes, telling her without words that he cared, that he remembered, that he had never truly left. And as their eyes met, the unspoken tension between them thick, almost tangible, she felt a rush of courage, a willingness to lean into the moment, to allow herself to feel, to hope, to acknowledge that the spark between them was real, alive, and waiting to be explored. And Liam, sensing her willingness, smiled softly, the expression tender, understanding, inviting. And when the cafe door jingled with a brief interruption, a cold breeze sweeping in, scattering a few napkins, they both laughed softly, a shared, light-hearted sound that broke the intensity just enough to make the moment sweeter. And Clara realized that even the small, mundane interruptions of life couldn't dim the connection, the emotions, the attraction building between them. And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows and bathing the room in amber light, she felt a quiet certainty, fragile but undeniable, that this evening, this moment, was the beginning of something important, something delicate and tender, something worth exploring, worth nurturing. And when Liam finally stepped back slightly, hands resting loosely by his side, eyes still on her, he said softly, "Clara, I think we've waited long enough." And she understood, without needing more words, that the repairs he had come to make extended far beyond the furniture, beyond the walls, that he had returned to fix the quiet, fragile spaces in their hearts. And she smiled, a mix of relief, joy, anticipation and love, because finally, after all the years, the unspoken, the longing, the desire, the care, all had a chance to be voiced, shared, and cherished. And as the evening deepened, the cafe became a quiet sanctuary for a reunion of hearts, fragile, tender, yet resilient, ready to begin anew. And Clara knew that some moments, some connections, some loves, could endure distance, silence and time and still return, alive and luminous, waiting only for the courage to be acknowledged, embraced, and allowed to grow. The evening settled over the cafe like a soft, warm blanket, the fading sunlight spilling through the windows in streaks of gold and amber, and Clara felt a quiet calm mixed with anticipation as she watched Liam move with ease, finishing the last few repairs, adjusting chairs, wiping surfaces, his hands steady, precise, yet gentle in a way that seemed to carry care not just for the cafe but for everything around him. And she couldn't help but notice how naturally he fit into the space, how his presence seemed to brighten even the smallest corners, and the thought struck her that perhaps he was meant to be here, in this moment, with her, after all these years of separation and unspoken longing. And when he glanced up, eyes meeting hers, a slow, meaningful smile spreading across his face, she felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of excitement, relief and hope, because the look he gave her held recognition, familiarity and something deeper, something she had always hoped would be there again. And as he walked toward her, brushing dust from his hands, there was a quiet electricity in the air, a tension that was gentle yet undeniable, the kind that made her heart race and breath catch. And she realized that this evening, this moment had shifted into something far more than cafe repairs, that it had become a space for hearts to reconnect, for old wounds to be tended, for emotions that had been carefully hidden or ignored to finally surface and be acknowledged. And when Liam spoke, his voice soft yet filled with meaning, "Clara, I think some things are worth more than we ever realize, and some moments are too important to let slip away." She felt a lump form in her throat, a mixture of relief and longing, because she understood he wasn't just talking about the cafe, he was talking about them, about the years that had passed, about the quiet spaces in their hearts that had remained untouched but not forgotten. And as he reached out, hand hovering near hers, she felt a magnetic pull, A desire to close the distance, to let the emotion she had kept tucked away for so long finally be felt, finally be expressed, and when their fingers brushed, the touch tentative yet electric, a shiver ran through her, a thrill of connection that made her knees weak and her chest flutter, and Liam's eyes softened, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips, as if he understood the significance of that single gentle touch. And in that moment, Clara realized that the years of longing, the quiet hope, the subtle yearning they had both carried, had all led to this instant, fragile yet powerful, tender yet alive with possibility. And as the cafe settled into a calm hush, the soft hum of the evening mixing with the faint clink of his tools being put away, she felt the tension shift, the space between them charged with emotion, anticipation, and a promise of something deeper, something real, something worth nurturing. And Liam stepped closer, just enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, their shoulders nearly touching, the subtle closeness making her pulse quicken and her thoughts spin. And when he finally spoke again, voice low, intimate, "Clara, I've waited a long time to say this, to be here, to finally be honest with myself and with you." Her breath caught, because she knew the moment had arrived, the moment to let go of fear, to embrace the vulnerability, to finally allow themselves to be open to what had always been possible between them. And as she took a careful step closer, heart pounding, eyes locking with his, she felt the quiet courage rise within her, the courage to trust, to feel, to step into the warmth of the connection they had always shared. And when Liam reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face, the gesture feather-light yet intimate, her pulse surged, tears threatening to spill, a mix of relief, hope, joy, and longing flooding her senses. And she realized in that instant that he hadn't just come to fix the cafe. He had come to repair the quiet spaces in her heart, the lonely corners that had waited for someone who truly understood, truly cared, truly saw her. And as they stood there, inches apart, the world outside fading into a soft blur of light and shadow, she felt a sense of completion, a sense of rightness, that despite the years apart, despite the moments lost or forgotten, they had found their way back to each other, to the space where hearts could speak without words, where glances, touches, and gentle smiles carried more meaning than anything spoken aloud. And when Liam's hand finally held hers fully, warm and steady, she felt a surge of emotion, a quiet exhilaration, because in that connection, she sensed safety, tenderness, and the thrill of love renewed. And he whispered softly, "Clara, I don't want to let this moment pass. I don't want to let us drift apart again." And she felt the tears slip freely now, happiness, relief, and longing all mingling, because she knew he meant every word, knew that the chance they had been given was real, fragile, yet powerful. And as they shared that quiet, intimate space, the cafe seemed to glow, bathed in the warm light of evening, the aroma of coffee and baked bread wrapping around them like a gentle embrace. And Clara realized that the repairs Liam had made were far beyond furniture and fixtures. They had mended something within her, within them, something delicate, tender, and alive. And when he finally leaned just slightly closer, a soft, tentative closeness that spoke volumes, she felt her heart soar, anticipation, joy, and love mingling in an exquisite harmony. And she understood that this evening, this reunion, was the beginning of a new chapter, a chance to rebuild, nurture, and cherish what had been waiting quietly for years, a chance to explore the feelings they had kept hidden, the bond they had never truly broken, the love that had always been there, patient, waiting, resilient. And as the last rays of sunlight faded, leaving the cafe in a soft twilight glow, Liam gently held her hands, their fingers intertwined, and whispered again, "Clara, we have a chance now, let's not waste it." And she smiled through tears, heart swelling, eyes bright, feeling the warmth of his hands, the steadiness of his presence, the undeniable connection between them. And she realized that sometimes life gave second chances, that love could endure distance, time, and unspoken longing, and that the courage to step forward, to open one's heart, to trust again, could transform everything. And in that quiet, golden moment, surrounded by the soft ambience of the cafe, the scent of coffee, the gentle shadows, and the lingering warmth of the day, Clara felt complete, hopeful, and alive with emotion, because Liam was not just repairing chairs, doors, and counters. He was repairing hearts, their hearts, fragile yet strong, tender yet resilient. And as they stood together, close, connected, hearts beating in tandem, she knew that the past had led them here, that every missed opportunity, every unspoken word, every quiet longing had culminated in this perfect, fragile, tender reunion. And as Liam leaned slightly closer, a soft, intimate closeness without words, she felt the promise of love, the thrill of connection, and the quiet joy of finding one's way back to the person who had always mattered most, and she knew that from this evening onward, their lives, hearts, and love would move forward together, carefully, gently, passionately, yet with a maturity and tenderness born from years of waiting, longing, and surviving apart. And in that quiet cafe, bathed in twilight, filled with the aroma of coffee and baked goods, Clara realized that some things, some people, some loves, were worth waiting for, worth repairing, worth holding on to. With everything you had, and Liam's hand in hers, steady, warm, and reassuring, was the proof that sometimes, even after the longest separation, hearts could reconnect, souls could realign, and love, patient, tender, and enduring, could bloom again in ways stronger, deeper, and more meaningful than ever before. And as they finally allowed themselves to savor the closeness, the shared silence, the intimate understanding between them, Clara felt a peace, a joy, and an excitement she had almost forgotten existed, knowing that tonight, in this simple cafe amidst the repaired chairs and counters, amidst the fading sunlight and quiet shadows, something lasting and beautiful had begun. Fragile yet alive, tender yet real, a love renewed, a bond reforged, and a promise quietly made to cherish, nurture, and never let go again.